Do not be afraid, the wolf that found you in the darkness did not come to harm you. It came because it knew you were the one it had been searching for. The storm had covered the silver pine forest in a blanket of cold rain, making every road disappear beneath the endless darkness. Sophia Claire Bennett gripped the steering wheel tightly as her headlights struggled to cut through the heavy weather. She had driven this road many times before, but tonight felt different. The quiet forest seemed almost alive, as if it was watching her journey through the trees. Sophia was the kind of person who always tried to see the good in difficult moments. At 24 years old, she had built a simple life near the edge of the forest, helping her neighbors, caring for abandoned animals, and finding peace in places others avoided. She never expected that one ordinary drive home would lead her toward a secret hidden beyond anything she had ever imagined. When the rain became heavier, Sophia slowed the car and looked ahead at the empty road. The next moment, the world around her changed. The vehicle came to a sudden stop, leaving her stranded far from the nearest town. The forest was silent except for the sound of rain against the windows. Sophia took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. She reached for her phone, but there was no signal. For the first time that night, she felt completely alone. Then she saw them. Two glowing eyes appeared between the trees. Sophia froze as a large wolf stepped slowly into the moonlight. Another followed behind it, then another. Their presence was mysterious, powerful, and unlike any wolves she had ever seen. But instead of feeling threatened, Sophia noticed something unexpected. They were watching her with a strange sense of concern. The largest wolf moved closer, lowering its head as if trying to tell her she was safe. Sophia could not explain why, but she felt a strange connection with the creature in front of her. Its eyes carried a familiar warmth, something that made her fear slowly disappear. "Are you here to help me?" she whispered. The wolf remained beside her, calm and protective, while the others stayed nearby like silent guardians of the forest. As the cold night continued, Sophia realized she was no longer alone. The mysterious wolves stayed with her until help arrived, never leaving her side. She believed she had simply been lucky. She believed they were only wild creatures that happened to find her at the right moment. She had no idea that the wolf who watched over her through the storm was not an ordinary animal. Deep within Silverpine, a hidden world existed beyond human understanding. A world ruled by powerful werewolves, ancient traditions, and bonds written by destiny itself. And among them was a King Alpha who had spent years waiting for a connection he never thought would come. His name was Alexander Ryan Blackwood. He was respected by many, feared by some, and trusted by his people. But even a King Alpha could not escape the pull of fate. Because the night Sophia was saved beneath the stormy sky was not an accident. It was the moment destiny finally brought two forgotten hearts together. Sophia Claire Bennett thought the strange night in Silverpine Forest would become a memory she would never fully understand. She returned home believing she had experienced a rare moment of kindness from creatures that should have remained wild and distant. But every time she closed her eyes, she remembered the same thing. The wolf with the unusual eyes. The way it stood beside her as if it knew exactly who she was. The feeling that somehow, without a single word, it had promised she would be safe. Days passed and life slowly returned to normal. Sophia went back to her small home near the edge of the forest, helping neighbors and continuing the quiet routine she had always known. But something inside her had changed. She felt as if a hidden part of the world had opened for a brief moment, then disappeared before she could understand it. Meanwhile, deep within Silverpine, another life was changing forever. Alexander Ryan Blackwood stood inside the ancient halls of his family estate, looking over reports from different parts of the territory. As the King Alpha of Silverpine, every decision carried responsibility. His people trusted him to protect their home and preserve the balance between their world and the human one. For years, Alexander had accepted his role without question. He believed duty came before everything else. But the night he found Sophia had awakened something he never expected. He could still remember the moment he saw her alone in the storm. He had sensed something different about her long before she knew he was there. She was not like anyone he had encountered before. She carried a quiet strength, a warmth that reached beyond fear and uncertainty. Alexander had spent years hearing stories about fated mates, but he never believed destiny would arrive in such an unexpected way. He had always thought that if such a bond existed, it would come when he was ready. Instead, it appeared when he was simply protecting someone who needed help. "You found her," one of his trusted companions said quietly. Alexander looked toward the forest beyond the palace windows. He knew exactly what those words meant. In their world, a fated mate was not just a connection. It was a bond built on trust, choice, and understanding. But Alexander also knew something else. Sophia was human. She did not know about his world. She did not know about the werewolves living beyond the trees. She did not know that the wolf who stayed beside her during the storm was the same person now thinking about her from a distance. Alexander refused to reveal the truth before she was ready. He did not want destiny to become a decision she felt forced to accept. If Sophia ever chose him, he wanted it to be because she saw who he truly was, not because of a bond she did not understand. Several days later, Sophia returned to the forest edge to leave flowers as a small thank you for the mysterious wolves that had saved her. She did not expect anyone to be there. But as she placed the flowers near the trees, she noticed a man standing nearby. He was calm, composed, and carried an unfamiliar presence that somehow felt strangely familiar. "You should be careful when you come this far into the forest," he said gently. Sophia looked at him with curiosity. There was something about his voice that reminded her of that unforgettable night. "Have we met before?" she asked. Alexander paused. For a moment, knowing the answer was more complicated than she could imagine. "Not in the way you think," he replied. Sophia did not know it yet, but the stranger standing before her was connected to the wolves that changed her life. And the secret he carried would soon reveal that her rescue was never just a coincidence. Sophia Claire Bennett could not stop thinking about the stranger from the forest. There was something unusual about Alexander Ryan Blackwood that she could not explain. He was calm, respectful, and different from anyone she had met before. Most people who visited the remote area near Silverpine came and left without noticing the beauty hidden within the forest. But Alexander seemed to understand the land in a way that felt almost natural, as if the trees and the quiet paths were a part of him. Sophia told herself that she was simply curious because he had appeared after the night of the accident. Yet deep down she knew there was something more. Every time she looked into his eyes, she remembered the mysterious wolf that had stayed beside her during the storm. Alexander noticed her questions but carefully kept his secret hidden. He knew that revealing the truth too quickly could change everything. Sophia had already experienced enough confusion after the accident. The last thing he wanted was to make her feel trapped by a world she never knew existed. Instead, he chose to let her discover the truth naturally. Over the following days, their paths crossed more often. Sophia learned that Alexander was responsible for managing the land around Silverpine. He spoke with the local communities, helped maintain the balance of the forest, and showed a deep respect for every living thing around him. She expected someone connected to such a mysterious place to be distant, but Alexander surprised her. Behind his quiet expression was someone who genuinely cared about others. One afternoon, while walking near the edge of the forest, Sophia noticed that Alexander seemed distracted. "You look like someone who is carrying a lot of responsibility," she said. Alexander looked at her with surprise. Few people noticed the weight behind his silence. "Is it that obvious?" he asked. Sophia smiled softly. "Only if someone is paying attention." Her answer reminded him of the night he found her. She had always noticed things others ignored. She had seen the kindness of the wolves before she understood what they were. She had trusted him before she knew his true identity. For Alexander, that made their connection even more meaningful. Meanwhile, Sophia began noticing small details that made her question everything. Alexander seemed to know the forest better than anyone. The wolves nearby appeared comfortable around him. Animals that usually avoided strangers seemed peaceful when he was present. She wondered if there was a reason behind the strange feeling she had whenever she was near him. One evening, Sophia and Alexander stood near the same area where the wolves had found her. The sky was clear, and the forest was quiet beneath the moonlight. "I never thanked you properly," Sophia said. Alexander looked at her. "For what?" "For being there that night." Alexander remained silent for a moment. He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted to explain that he was the wolf who had stayed beside her when she was afraid. But he also wanted to protect her choice. "I am glad you are safe," he finally said. Sophia looked at him and felt that his words carried a deeper meaning. She did not understand why, but she felt she could trust him. Far away from human eyes, the werewolf community watched carefully. They knew their King Alpha had found his fated mate. They also knew the future of Silverpine might depend on how carefully Alexander handled the truth. Because destiny had brought Sophia to the forest for a reason. And soon, she would discover that the night of the storm was not the beginning of her story. It was the moment her true destiny began. The days that followed brought Sophia Claire Bennett closer to the mystery surrounding Silverpine Forest. She still did not know the truth about Alexander Ryan Blackwood, but every conversation with him revealed another layer beneath his quiet and confident presence. She had met many people who tried to appear important, but Alexander was different. He never spoke about himself as if he needed recognition. Instead, he paid attention to the people around him, listened carefully, and carried himself with a calm strength that felt natural. Sophia began to understand that the man standing before her was not simply someone who managed the forest. There was something much greater hidden behind his identity. Deep within Silverpine, Alexander faced a challenge of his own. As the King Alpha of the werewolf community, he carried responsibilities that extended far beyond his personal feelings. The elders of the pack knew about Sophia. They knew the bond between them had begun the moment Alexander found her during the storm. Some believed destiny had finally answered a question that had remained unanswered for years. Others worried about what her arrival could mean for their hidden world. Alexander listened to their concerns, but his decision remained clear. Sophia deserved the chance to learn the truth in her own time. She was not a symbol. She was not a solution to a problem. She was a person who deserved respect and freedom of choice. That belief was one of the reasons the werewolf community trusted him as their leader. One afternoon, Alexander invited Sophia to visit a quiet area near the center of Silverpine. He wanted to show her the beauty of the land beyond the road she knew. As they walked beneath the tall trees, Sophia noticed how peaceful everything felt. The forest was not the frightening place many people imagined. It was alive, balanced, and full of hidden beauty. "You seem connected to this place," Sophia said. Alexander looked around before answering. "This forest has been part of my life for as long as I can remember. It is where I learned what it means to protect something." Sophia looked at him thoughtfully. "And who protects you?" The question caught him off guard. For years, people had asked what he could do for them. Almost no one asked what he needed. Alexander looked away for a moment, unable to find an easy answer. Sophia noticed his silence and did not push him. She simply stayed beside him. That small gesture meant more than she realized. Meanwhile, Sophia began discovering small clues about the truth. She noticed how the wolves always appeared when Alexander was nearby. She noticed how they looked at him with respect rather than fear. She noticed how Alexander seemed to understand their behavior in a way no ordinary person could. But instead of feeling afraid, she felt more curious. The mysterious world around her no longer seemed dangerous. It felt like a place waiting to be understood. As the sun began to set, Alexander and Sophia returned to the edge of the forest. Before leaving, Sophia turned toward him. "I still do not understand why I feel like I have known you longer than I actually have." Alexander looked at her with a quiet expression filled with emotions he could not yet explain. "Maybe some connections do not begin when people meet," he said. "Maybe they begin long before that." Sophia carried those words with her after she left. She did not know that the truth she was searching for was closer than she imagined. She did not know that the stranger who had entered her life was also the wolf who had saved her. And she did not know that the bond between them was not created by chance. It was written by destiny long before either of them understood its meaning. Sophia Claire Bennett had always believed that some moments in life were impossible to explain. The night in Silverpine Forest was one of those moments. She still remembered the storm, the mysterious wolves, and the feeling that she had not been alone even when everything around her seemed uncertain. But now, every time she spent time with Alexander Ryan Blackwood, that feeling became stronger. There was something familiar about him that reached beyond simple friendship. It was as if a part of her already knew him before she had ever learned his name. Alexander noticed the same thing. Every conversation with Sophia reminded him why the bond between them felt different from anything he had experienced before. She did not treat him like the King Alpha of Silverpine. She did not look at him with expectations or fear. She simply saw him as Alexander. That was something he had not experienced in many years. Inside the hidden world of the werewolves, the connection between them became a subject of quiet discussion. The elders understood the importance of a fated mate bond, but they also understood the importance of choice. Alexander had always believed that destiny should never remove someone's freedom. A bond could bring two people together, but trust was something they had to build themselves. That was why he continued to protect Sophia's right to discover the truth at her own pace. One evening, Alexander invited Sophia to a peaceful clearing deep within Silverpine. The area was surrounded by tall trees, soft grass, and the gentle sound of a nearby stream. It was a place where he often went when he needed a moment away from his responsibilities. Sophia looked around with wonder. "I never imagined a place like this existed so close to my home," she said. Alexander smiled slightly. Most people only see the forest from a distance. They never take the time to understand it. Sophia looked at him. "Is that how you feel about people too?" The question surprised him. "What do you mean?" she asked. "You understand things that others overlook," she explained. "Maybe you know what it feels like when someone only sees part of who you are." Alexander became quiet because her words were closer to the truth than she realized. Everyone in Silverpine knew his title. Everyone respected his authority. But very few people knew the person beneath the role. Sophia was different. She noticed his silence, his responsibilities, and the moments when he carried too much without saying anything. Meanwhile, Sophia began noticing changes within herself. The forest that once felt unfamiliar now felt peaceful. The wolves that once seemed mysterious now felt like companions. And the man beside her, who still kept many secrets, felt like someone she could trust. She did not understand why, but being near Alexander made her feel like she had finally found a place where she belonged. Later that night, Alexander watched from a distance as Sophia walked back toward her home. He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted to reveal that he was the wolf who had stayed beside her during the storm. He wanted her to understand why their connection felt impossible to ignore. But he remembered his promise. He would not allow destiny to decide for her. Sophia had to choose him freely. As the moonlight covered Silverpine, both of them felt the same truth growing stronger. Something connected them beyond explanation. Something older than a single meeting. And soon, the secret hidden between them would finally begin to come to light. The secret surrounding Silverpine was becoming harder for Sophia Claire Bennett to ignore. Every visit to the forest brought new questions, but it also brought a strange sense of peace. She had spent her entire life believing the world was simple. Humans lived their lives, forests remained mysterious places, and stories about hidden creatures belonged only in old legends. But after meeting Alexander Ryan Blackwood, everything she thought she knew began to change. Alexander was not just a man connected to the forest. He carried a presence that felt ancient, powerful, and impossible to explain. Yet despite everything mysterious about him, Sophia felt safe whenever he was near. That feeling confused her more than anything else. She had always trusted her instincts, and her instincts told her that Alexander was someone she could believe in. Meanwhile, Alexander struggled with a decision he had avoided for days. He knew Sophia deserved the truth. She deserved to know about Silverpine, the werewolf community, and the bond that connected them. But he also knew that revealing everything could change the way she looked at him forever. The last thing he wanted was for Sophia to see him only as a King Alpha, or as someone connected to an ancient destiny. He wanted her to see Alexander, the person who listened to her, laughed with her, and valued every moment they shared. One evening, Alexander invited Sophia to a quiet gathering near the edge of Silverpine. He wanted her to meet some of the people who lived within the hidden community. Sophia noticed immediately that something was different. The people there treated Alexander with deep respect, not like an ordinary man who managed the forest. They looked at him like someone who carried great responsibility. As Sophia watched them, she slowly began to understand that Alexander's life was much larger than she imagined. "Who are you really?" she finally asked when they were alone. Alexander remained silent for a moment. He had prepared for this question, but no answer felt simple enough. Someone who has spent a long time protecting a world most people never know exists, he said. Sophia looked at him carefully. And do I belong to that world? Alexander looked at her with honesty. That choice is yours. His answer surprised her. She expected him to explain destiny or tell her what she was supposed to do. Instead, he reminded her that she had control over her own future. That was the moment Sophia realized something important about him. Alexander was powerful, but he never used that power to control others. His strength came from protecting their freedom. Later that night, Sophia walked through Silverpine with 1,000 thoughts in her mind. She knew there was more to Alexander than he had revealed. She knew the wolves were connected to him. She knew the strange bond she felt was not just imagination. But instead of fear, she felt curiosity. She wanted to understand the truth. She wanted to know why the forest felt like a place she had always known. Deep within the hidden halls of Silverpine, Alexander stood before his people and made his decision clear. He would tell Sophia the truth, but he would do it when the moment was right. He would not let fear decide their future. He would not let tradition decide for her. Because the connection between them was not meaningful because destiny created it. It was meaningful because two people were slowly choosing to trust each other. And soon Sophia would finally learn the truth about the wolf who saved her life and the King Alpha who had been protecting her all along. Sophia Claire Bennett had spent years believing that some questions were better left unanswered. But after discovering the hidden world within Silverpine, she realized that avoiding the truth would no longer bring her peace. The forest that once seemed like a place of mystery had become the place where she found the most honesty. And at the center of that mystery was Alexander Ryan Blackwood. She knew he was hiding something important. She knew the wolves were connected to him. She knew the way he looked at her carried a meaning he had never spoken aloud. But what surprised her most was that she did not feel afraid. She felt ready to understand. Alexander knew the moment had arrived. He could no longer protect Sophia by keeping every secret hidden. True trust could not exist without honesty. So beneath the ancient trees of Silverpine, he finally decided to show her the world he had spent his entire life protecting. The path led Sophia beyond the familiar trails and into a hidden valley surrounded by towering forests and peaceful landscapes. She looked around in amazement as she saw a community unlike anything she had ever imagined. The people there welcomed Alexander with respect, and Sophia finally understood why his presence carried such authority. He was not simply a guardian of the forest. He was their leader. "You are their king," Sophia whispered. Alexander looked at her quietly and nodded. "I am the King Alpha of Silverpine." For a moment Sophia stood in silence. She thought about the night of the storm, the wolves that protected her, and the man who had entered her life without asking for anything in return. The truth was overwhelming, but it also explained so many things she had felt from the beginning. "The wolf that stayed with me that night," she said softly. Alexander lowered his eyes, knowing she already understood the answer. "It was me." Sophia felt a wave of emotions. She remembered the warmth she felt when the mysterious wolf stood beside her. She remembered the sense of safety she could not explain. Now everything finally connected. But instead of feeling betrayed, she felt grateful. Alexander had hidden the truth, but he had never used it to control her. He had protected her choice from the beginning. "Why did you not tell me?" Sophia asked. Alexander looked at her honestly. "Because I wanted you to know me before you knew my title. I wanted you to trust the person, not the position." His answer touched something deep within her. Sophia realized that the most powerful man in Silverpine was also the one who respected her freedom the most. She understood then that their connection was not only about destiny. It was about the choices they made every day. As the evening light covered the valley, the wolves of Silverpine watched quietly from a distance. They had waited many years for this moment. They knew their King Alpha had finally found someone who saw beyond the crown. And Sophia finally understood the truth that had been waiting since the night of the storm. The wolf who saved her was never a mystery meant to frighten her. He was the person destiny had placed in her path, not to decide her future, but to walk beside her toward it. Sophia Claire Bennett had always believed that being accepted meant proving that she belonged. For most of her life, She had been the person who quietly helped others while asking for nothing in return. She never expected that one day she would stand inside a hidden world and discover that her greatest strength was the very thing others often overlooked. But now, standing beside Alexander Ryan Blackwood in Silverpine, she began to understand that destiny had not brought her there because she was powerless. It had brought her there because she had something this world needed. After revealing the truth about his identity, Alexander expected Sophia to need time. He expected questions, uncertainty, and hesitation. What he did not expect was her willingness to understand. She did not see him only as the King Alpha. She still saw the man who stayed beside her during the storm, the person who listened when others ignored, and the leader who valued compassion over pride. "You could have told me from the beginning," Sophia said quietly as they walked through the peaceful valley. Alexander nodded. "I could have. But I wanted your trust to come from knowing me, not from knowing my title." Those words stayed with her. In Silverpine, many people had spent years seeing Alexander as a symbol of strength. They saw the crown, the responsibility, and the power he carried. Sophia saw something different. She saw the person who carried those responsibilities alone for far too long. Her presence slowly began changing the atmosphere around the kingdom. She spoke with villagers, listened to concerns, and treated every person with the same kindness regardless of their position. The werewolves of Silverpine noticed the difference. They had expected the fated mate of their King Alpha to be someone who demanded attention because of her connection to him. Instead, Sophia earned respect through simple actions. She did not ask to be important. She simply cared. Alexander watched this transformation with quiet admiration. For years, he believed leadership meant standing above everyone else. Sophia showed him that true leadership meant standing with others. She reminded him that a kingdom was not built only through rules and traditions. It was built through trust. However, not everyone welcomed the changes happening in Silverpine. Some members of the old council worried that the arrival of an Omega from the human world would challenge the traditions they had followed for generations. They questioned whether Sophia truly understood the responsibility connected to her place beside the King Alpha. Sophia heard their doubts, but she did not respond with anger. Instead, she remained patient. She knew that trust could not be demanded. It had to be earned. When Alexander saw her standing calmly despite the uncertainty around her, he realized something important. Sophia was not changing Silverpine because of her connection to him. She was changing it because of who she already was. That night, beneath the silver moonlight, Alexander and Sophia stood together overlooking the kingdom. "You have changed everything," Alexander said softly. Sophia smiled. "No, I only reminded everyone of something they already knew." Alexander looked at her with a sense of peace he had not felt in years. The woman who entered his life through a storm had become the person who brought warmth back into his world. And as Silverpine prepared for a new future, both of them knew their journey was no longer about discovering destiny. It was about choosing what they would build together. The morning sun rose over Silverpine, casting a warm golden light across the kingdom that had changed more than anyone expected. For years, the people of Silverpine believed strength came from tradition, authority, and the ability to stand alone. But now they were beginning to understand a different kind of strength. It was found in compassion, trust, and the courage to see beyond what was familiar. At the center of this change stood Sophia Claire Bennett and Alexander Ryan Blackwood. Sophia never imagined that a quiet life near the forest would lead her to a hidden world, a powerful King Alpha, and a destiny she never knew existed. Yet the greatest surprise was not discovering that werewolves were real. The greatest surprise was discovering that the person she trusted most was someone who had been protecting her long before she knew his name. Alexander had spent his life carrying the weight of leadership. As King Alpha, he believed his purpose was to protect Silverpine and the people who depended on him. He had accepted loneliness as part of his responsibility, believing that a leader could never truly set down the burden they carried. But Sophia showed him something he had forgotten. A true leader did not have to carry everything alone. With her beside him, Alexander began to see the future of Silverpine differently. The old traditions that once seemed unchangeable slowly began to open toward a new understanding. The people who once questioned Sophia started to recognize the qualities that made her special. She was not respected because of her connection to the King Alpha. She was respected because of her kindness, her patience, and the way she treated everyone with dignity. Sophia also discovered that belonging was not about where she came from. It was about the place where her heart felt understood. Silverpine was no longer just a mysterious forest from her past. It had become a home filled with people who accepted her for who she truly was. One evening, Sophia and Alexander returned to the place where their journey had first begun. The quiet forest path looked different now. The fear and uncertainty from that stormy night had been replaced by peace and understanding. Alexander looked at the trees where he had first found her and smiled softly. "Everything changed that night," he said. Sophia looked at him. "Not because you saved me?" Alexander shook his head gently. "Because you reminded me that life was more than duty." Sophia smiled, knowing that their story had never been only about a fated bond. Destiny may have brought them together, but their choices created the connection they shared. They chose honesty. They chose trust. They chose to understand each other beyond titles and expectations. As the seasons changed and Silverpine entered a new era, the kingdom remembered the story of the Omega who arrived during a storm and the King Alpha who discovered a different kind of strength. It was not a story about power or perfection. It was a story about two people who found each other when they least expected it, and learned that the strongest bonds are built through kindness, respect, and the freedom to choose. And deep within the peaceful forest, where the journey began, the quiet whisper of destiny remained. Not as a command, but as a reminder that some connections are meant to guide two hearts toward the future they were always searching for.